Thank you. I would be speaking to you about the component surgery of the cornea and the evolution of the lamellar keratoplasty. If you see, it was the first lamellar graft was done in 1886 by von Hippel. Then Gerrit Melis in 1998 has been credited by describing the new techniques of deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty and posterior lamellar keratoplasty. Mark Terry in 2001 gave deep lamellar endothelial keratoplasty, and Francis Price and Grove described respectively the Descemet stripping endothelial keratoplasty and the Descemet stripping automated endothelial keratoplasty. And Gerrit Melis again described the technique which is more recently come up, that is DMEC or the Descemet membrane endothelial keratoplasty. Now, penetrating keratoplasty is a time-tested technique, and we all are familiar with it now over 100 years. And the surgeons are also familiar with it, and we know how to do it, but we are also familiar with the problems which come along with it, which include the problems of long postoperative visual recovery, ocular surface problems, problems of graft rejection, increased chances of wound rupture after trivial trauma, and change in the anatomy of the angle of the anterior chamber. So there could be suture-related problems such as infection, ulceration, vascularization, high astigmatism, and prolonged visual rehabilitation, then persistent epithelial defects, graft infection which is related to the sutures, and even endophthalmitis. Then there could be problems of astigmatism because you have to adjust the sutures for high astigmatism, which is more notoriously after a penetrating keratoplasty. And the most ominous complication is the problem of expulsive hemorrhage. And this is a case where we were trying to switch the corneas, and we had already done the surgery in the right eye, and we had harvested a good clear cornea from the left eye. And just as we left open sky and we were about to close this, expulsive hemorrhage occurred with vitreous, with the prolapse of the intraocular contents, retinal detachment, and this was the choroidal hemorrhage. And we would have perhaps never recorded this case because we routinely don't record penetrating keratoplasties, because we were switching corneas and doing a contralateral autokeratoplasty from one eye to the other. We happened to record this case and this complication. So we have moved from the older era of overkill therapeutics, where we just did penetrating keratoplasty and lamellar keratoplasty for any kind of opacity that we had, to a more customized approach where we are now doing component surgery of the cornea. That is, we are just removing the diseased layer of the cornea and replacing it with the healthy one. So we do anterior lamellar keratoplasty, posterior lamellar keratoplasty, and wherein all the layers of the cornea are involved, we do a penetrating keratoplasty. So for anterior corneal opacities and anterior corneal dystrophies, such as Professor Ritu Arora showed you, we do a manual lamellar keratoplasty or automated lamellar therapeutic keratoplasty, or a ALTK, deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty or DALK for mid to posterior stromal opacities, and posterior lamellar keratoplasty, that is the Descemet stripping automated endothelial keratoplasty, and the Descemet's membrane endothelial keratoplasty for diseased Descemet's membrane and the endothelium. And if you see, lamellar keratoplasty is extraocular procedure as opposed to penetrating keratoplasty, which is intraocular. It is partial thickness as opposed to penetrating keratoplasty, which is full thickness. Because you have more corneal tissue in penetrating keratoplasty, there are more chances of graft rejection and less with lamellar grafts. And there are more chances of all the intraocular related problems, which would include peripheral anterior synechia, cataract formation, glaucoma, because you have to use more steroids for these patients, and less chances of these intraocular complications with a lamellar graft, and again more astigmatism. And I think very important for us in developing countries, you require a very good quality donor tissue for penetrating keratoplasty with a good endothelium, whereas for the anterior lamellar keratoplasty and for deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty, you can get away with a donor quality criteria which is less stringent, but for posterior lamellar keratoplasty, again you require a very good tissue with endothelial cell counts of more than 2,500 plus. Preoperative evaluation for cases of lamellar keratoplasty is again very important, and you would do a routine examination. And the most important cases of lamellar keratoplasty and anterior lamellar keratoplasty especially is the pachymetry, because that helps you to decide what would be your depth of trephonation. So pachymetry, ultrasonic is gold standard, but if you don't have access to that, OPSCAN, Pentacam, ASOCT, pachymetry should be done for all cases of lamellar grafts. Now coming to the partial thickness keratoplasty or lamellar keratoplasty, it could be manual or it could be automated. This is a video to show how we used to do manual dissection earlier. This is the King's clamp wherein the corneal scleral rim has been placed, has been fixed, and the lamella are being separated using the manual lamella dissector. And notice the corrugations that are present on the surface of both at the recipient bed as well as the graft. Whereas if you use an automated lamellar therapeutic keratoplasty system such as this is the ALTK system by Moria. The graft bed is quite smooth. And with the manual keratoplasty, you could have problems of interface debris, you could have interface haze because of irregular dissection, which are not there with ALTK. ALTK is technically easy, is less time consuming because the machine does the job in a much faster manner. It gives you a smooth host and a donor cut, and the thickness is nearly exact. And there are hardly any interface problems. With manual lamellar keratoplasty, the vision always tends to be a little suboptimal because of interface problems and irregular dissection that may be there with the manual lamellar dissectors. Now, the indications for the anterior lamellar keratoplasty include keratoconic corneas, spheroidal degeneration, Salzmann nodular degeneration, granular dystrophy, the popcorn opacities which you see on the cornea. And I think this video has already been shown in the morning where ALTK is done using the automated microkeratome. A 350 micron head is being used to slice the cornea so that you have an anterior lamellar button which can be used for anterior lamellar keratoplasty. And this is a keratoconic cornea on which 250 microns would be removed, and this would be then replaced by the normal cornea which is not diseased, which is not keratoconic, and the 10-0 monofilament nylon sutures are then given, which are given interrupted, or they can even be continuous. These are some of the results to show that if you have healed keratitis, which is anteriorly there in Salzmann nodular degeneration and keratoconus, this is how an anterior lamellar keratoplasty looks like. And notice that there is an interface with the ALTK, but it is pretty smooth. If you see the results, best corrected visual acuity of better than 612 was obtained in almost 90% of the cases, and the astigmatism is much less, or less than about 4.5 diopters in all the cases in all the studies. Coming to deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty, you can do the dissection using BSS, that is hydrodelamination, viscoelastic, that is viscodissection, air inside the anterior chamber, or the big bubble technique showed by Anwar. The advantages are that you are reaching right up to the level of the Descemet's membrane, so the maximal removal of the diseased tissue is done. The Descemet's membrane is a smooth graft bed, and there is virtually no interface present. It has been indicated for ectasias, which I discussed in the morning, as well as other dystrophies such as stromal dystrophies, anterior stromal dystrophies, ocular surface disease like trichomatous keratopathy, desmatoceles, any condition where your Descemet's membrane and endothelium is fine. It is contraindicated, although now we've started doing even in cases of healed hydrops, but you do require a lot of expertise. But in general, for postgraduates, it is contraindicated in cases of healed hydrops and whenever there is any endothelial involvement. The donor tissue could be of poorer endothelial quality, but avoid a tissue with a heavy arcus, and because there are chances of perforation with the deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty, a backup good quality tissue should always be available. And this is the Malice technique, which does reach up to a level which is near the Descemet's membrane, but not quite up to the exact Descemet's membrane level. And in this, the air bubble is instilled inside the anterior chamber. A 400 micron groove is made at the sclera. Viscoelastic is then injected inside this limbus to limbus dissection that you have done. And this is followed by the applying sutures on the incision that was there, a trephination that is done at the level of 400 microns. This is then removed and you have reached right up to the level of about 100 microns, and graft apposition is then done with the help of 10-0 monofilament nylon sutures. So you may have about 100 microns of cornea left, but that is clear, and it is fine if you are not well versed with the big bubble technique, which is technically more difficult. And this is the big bubble technique that is being shown here. A partial thickness trephonation is done to the level of 60 to 70% depth. Then this is a 30 gauge needle which is being used to inject air up to above the Descemet's membrane. The debulking of the superficial corneal layers is then done, and this is followed by a nick which is then given over the stromal layers. AC paracentesis is done first so that your Descemet's membrane falls back. A nick is given on the stromal layers, and notice how the air will just come out. The air is there in the supra-Descemet's membrane compartment. And this supra-Descemet's membrane compartment is then reinforced again with the viscoelastic agent such as Helon. And just like in phacoemulsification, you would do a quadrantic separation. Similarly, by divide and conquer technique, you separate each of the quadrants with the help of the Vanna scissors over the viscoelastic cushion which is lying over the Descemet's membrane. And after excising out each of these quadrants, then a donor is taken and is sutured onto the host from wherein the Descemet's membrane has been bereaved. Now, this is a technique that we devised, and this now it's a useful technique which helps in in reaching the Descemet's membrane and identifying that you are in the correct plane. That is just above the Descemet's membrane compartment, and this has an audio.
A Hesburgh-Barron suction trephine was used to perform partial thickness trephonation of the host cornea to an approximate depth of 60 to 70% of the corneal thickness. A self-sealing paracentesis wound was created with a 15-degree surgical blade just posterior to the limbus at 11 o'clock, and some aqueous humor was expressed. Subsequently, a small amount of air of 3 to 4 millimeter in diameter and 0.08 to 0.1 cc in volume was injected into the anterior chamber. Following this, a 27-gauge needle was advanced horizontally in the corneal stroma, and then air was injected gradually into the stroma to form the big bubble. Air was injected until peripheral movement of the bubble of air injected earlier in the anterior chamber was noted. This dynamic sign allowed us to immediately cease the injection of air into the cornea, as it was indicative of complete formation of the big bubble. Debulking of the anterior 2/3 of the corneal stroma was then done, leaving a thin layer of posterior corneal stroma underneath. A 15-degree blade stained with gentian violet was used to create a shelved opening into the potential space between the Descemet's membrane and the posterior stroma. Entry into this space was easily identified by the dynamic movement of the small bubble from the periphery of the anterior chamber back to the center of the AC. At this point, the incision was immediately discontinued, and 2% hydroxypropyl methyl cellulose was injected through the opening into the potential space to clearly delineate it. A pair of blunt-tipped curved Vanna scissors was used to divide the thin layer of the posterior corneal stroma tissue into 4 quadrants, and each quadrant was subsequently excised, bearing the Descemet's membrane completely. A 0.25 mm oversized donor lenticule was punched from the endothelial side, and its Descemet's membrane was removed after staining with 0.06% trypan blue dye. The donor lenticule was then secured with 16-10-0 monofilament nylon sutures.
So these are the results of the deep anterior double bubble technique of the deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty in cases of 2 cases of keratoconus. And again, notice that in ALTK you do have an interface, but in DALK there is virtually no interface. And this technique was also used in cases of trichomatous keratopathy, wherein the Descemet's membrane is normal, the macular dystrophy, where again the Descemet's membrane is not involved. And this was the video that I showed you earlier, a case of Hurler's syndrome, where both eyes were operated and the patient had a visual acuity of 618 and 612 respectively. You can also do this in cases of desmetocele, because your Descemet's is clearly shining, and it is in fact very easy to do it because you can just inject viscoelastic here, and the Descemet's, the overlying stromal layers, they come out quite easily. Now, coming to the component surgery for peripheral ectasias, again we have talked about it partly in the morning, a case of keratoglobus where we can do the tuck-in lamellar keratoplasty. And I would just explain this diagram because the movie has already been shown, that wherever the thinning is there, if it is there circumferentially all around, such as in keratoglobus, you give this peripheral flange to reinforce that area. And if it is there, in, for instance, in pellucid marginal degeneration inferiorly, then again this flange is given inferiorly only to reinforce that particular area. It is important to understand that the wound of a DALK should be treated like that of a penetrating keratoplasty. Just because it's a lamellar keratoplasty, we should not remove the sutures early because there are chances of wound resistance, because Descemet's membrane is hardly a few micron in thickness, which is holding on to the recipient bed. And so you should always treat it like that of a penetrating keratoplasty and take your time to remove the sutures. There could be problems with DALK such as Descemet membrane folds, like in this case, but they do disappear over a period of time. And if you've perforated the Descemet's membrane, then there could be double anterior chambers such as this, seen on anterior segment OCT also, but if you inject air, then the Descemet's membrane sits back and gets attached. And again, this is a case where after phacoemulsification, there was a Descemet's membrane detachment in a case where there was a cataract wherein DALK had been done, and after injection of the air, after injection of C3F8 injection, the graft became clear and the Descemet's got attached. Then there are chances of graft rejection, but they respond, they are reversible easily. They are less severe as compared to a penetrating keratoplasty, such as in this case. You can see two cases which have reversed on topical steroids. Now coming to the endothelial keratoplasty, the DSEK, the DSAEK and the DMEK. Endothelial keratoplasty is virtually a sutureless graft such as this. And it was introduced by Mellis, but it has undergone various modifications. When you are just using a Descemet's membrane roll, it is the DMEK or the Descemet membrane endothelial keratoplasty. But if some amount of stroma is also present with the Descemet membrane, then it is Descemet stripping automated endothelial keratoplasty. And this technique of deep lamellar endothelial keratoplasty, we all are not doing routinely nowadays. It essentially is the replacement of the diseased Descemet's membrane and endothelium, and there are virtually no sutures. It is indicated in cases of bullous keratopathy, Fuchs dystrophy, even failed penetrating keratoplasty where the anterior part is clear, ICE syndrome, in congenital hereditary endothelial dystrophy, and where there is corneal decompensation due to any pathology where the endothelial decompensation is there, such as post-glaucoma or post-VR surgery. You require adequate space in the anterior chamber because when you are going to put the graft, so the anterior chamber is going to become a little shallow, but with now the current modifications, it can be done in the presence of a shunt device, peripheral anterior synechiae, even iris abnormalities, presence of AC IOL, and the AC depth should be at least 2.5 millimeters. And I think it is a technique which is extremely clever. It waited for all the other techniques to actually evolve and then finally evolved itself. It used the concept of a small incision like phaco or SICS. If we are folding the transplant just like you have a foldable intraocular implant, we use the pull or the push technique with the suture or the glide or the forceps, just like we use forceps we used to use forceps for an IOL implant. And it uses the concept of self-adherence, just like the LASIK flaps anteriorly adhere, so we thought why not posterior flaps which should also adhere themselves. And from vitreoretina surgery, it has taken the concept of air because air was used to flatten the retina, and so air is used here to cause the tamponade of the back of the cornea. It avoids open sky procedure. There are less surface sutures. Tectonic stability is there because there are no sutures. Predictable topography is there because you are just replacing the back of the cornea and not the front. Less astigmatism, less graft failure due to ocular surface disease, and it preserves the corneal nerves. And as opposed to a penetrating keratoplasty where the rehabilitation takes 1 year, here it takes only 3 to 4 months. The cases which are suitable for DSEK are these which have no stromal scarring present, only the endothelium is diseased, and not such as these where stromal scarring is present, because this will never be able to resolve on DSEK alone, and you have to do a full thickness penetrating keratoplasty. So the posterior lamellar lenticule for the donor can be dissected manually, such as shown here, or it can be done in an automated manner using the ALTK machine. Manually, again, just like the Mellis technique, you have to do limbus to limbus dissection and flip this and then fashion the posterior lamellar lenticule such as here. So 350 microns of the anterior part has already been split here, and it is just the 150 microns which is there, which is being punched for posterior lamellar lenticule. And there are various methods by which this posterior lamellar lenticule, which is about 150 microns in thickness, can be injected intracamurally, and we are most often now using the Busen glide. This is movie sutureless DSEK surgery. You can use it, you can do it using a corneal suture or even the scleral tunnel. The anterior part of the cornea is marked here at around 8.5 millimeter, and the Descemet's membrane, which is diseased, is then being scraped with the help of the Descemet membrane scorer. And this is the Descemet membrane stripper, which may be required in some of the cases, and the Descemet's membrane is stained with a trypan blue dye. And after this is removed, the posterior lamellar lenticule, which had been punched previously, is placed on the Busen glide. The Busen glide is inverted back, and with the ILM peeling forceps or with the DSEK forceps, the graft is placed intracamurally. And just as you inject the air bubble, you can actually see the edges of the graft, and then you can do external massage to cause the centration of the graft. You can also apply a suture, Prolene suture to the edge of the graft, and this is on a straight needle, and then this can be pulled inside the anterior chamber. A suture pull through technique that we used to do earlier prior to the advent of the Busen glide, and again inject air so that the graft sticks to the back of the cornea, and these are some of the results. Virtually there are no sutures. Now, because we are doing component surgery of the cornea, it has allowed us to use one cornea for multiple recipients, the anterior part for automated lamellar keratoplasty, the posterior part for DSEK, and the stem cell for the limbal lenticule for the stem cell. So we've used one cornea and 3 recipients, which we published for the first time, where one cornea was used for 3 recipients, and especially makes sense in a country like ours where there's paucity of good quality donor material, and this is the case where DSEK was done in some of our few cases of DSEK. The best corrected visual acuity of better than 612 is generally obtained in 70 to 90% of the cases, and because you're putting a thicker tissue inside, there is a hyperopia of 1 to 1.5 diopter. Earlier the endothelial cell loss was much higher, but now it has, with the modern techniques and technology, it is similar to penetrating keratoplasty. A 5-year rate is 25%. And graft rejection is less because you are transplanting less amount of the tissue. It is 7% versus 13% in cases of penetrating keratoplasty at 2 years. Endothelial cell loss has also come down, which is very much similar to penetrating keratoplasty. Now, the problems which are unique to DSEK are problems of dislocated grafts, which may be there because of Descemet membrane stance, or because of trapped fluid, or because of geometric mismatch between the donor and the recipient. And when this happens, then you have to rebubble these grafts back into position. So this is a rebubbled DSEK, which has cleared up over a period of time, but sometimes they dislocate inferiorly, and then you have to change them or do a penetrating keratoplasty. This is primary graft failure rate. Of course, the requirement of endothelial cells is much higher here than for a conventional penetrating keratoplasty, because you anticipate that there is more manipulation here as compared to penetrating keratoplasty. Now, it is said that the thinner these grafts are, the better is the visual acuity, and so came in the concept of ultra-thin DSEK, which used first cut of 300 microns, a technique which was advocated by Busen, and this is his movie. And then after 300 microns have been removed, another head is taken which removes 100 or 150 microns, so that now the graft, which was 150 microns, which we used to take initially, is only about 100 microns or less than 100 microns. So this is essentially done after measuring the pachymetry and seeing how much you have to take the second pass at. This is called as a double pass technique of DSEK or for ultra thin DSEK, to make the posterior lamellar lenticule as thin as possible, because thinner lenticules give better visual acuities. extension of the endokeratoplasty lexicon. As an extension of that, we came with Descemet's membrane endothelial keratoplasty, which uses the technique similar to DSEK, except that you don't have any stroma in it. It is a pure Descemet's membrane transplant, and the donors have to be more than 50 years of age because the tissue otherwise would be very elastic and difficult to handle, difficult to separate from the donor tissue and inject it. And the only problem with this technique is that the endothelial cell loss is high because the manipulations are much more. And after the Descemet's membrane has been taken, made into a roll, it is loaded onto the Busenglide or into any cartridge or injector very much similar to an ICL cartridge. And this is then placed inside the anterior chamber. It is difficult to handle, difficult to unfold, difficult to ensure that the correct side is unfolding with the endothelium down. But over a period of time, one does master this surgery, and the air bubble is then instilled again so as to cause the Descemet's membrane roll to attach to the back of the cornea. The results are good as far as the visual acuity is concerned, but there are problems again, problems of graft detachment and problems of placing the correct side down. Graft rejections are much less, 1 to 2% as opposed to DSEK 7%, as opposed to PK 21%. Visual acuities are better, but probably there may be graft failure, especially in the hands of the novice surgeon, and it requires a technical skill. Coming to the last video, femtosecond can be used for DALCs, although and as well as for DSEKs, although we do not have very good nomograms to reach right up to the level of 400 microns depth of the cornea, but the nomograms are getting refined, and over a period of time we may have softwares which allow us to go deeper without any irregularities in the bed, and this is otherwise very much similar to as one sees in case of LASIK. Some bridges are there which have to be separated out with the help of the instruments which are dedicated for it. So to conclude, lamellar surgeries are safe and predictable, and they are virtually established, DALC, DSEK and DMEK. But full thickness penetrating keratoplasty does have a role to play in a country like ours, because for us, like Dr. Basak said, healed keratitis, full thickness and therapeutic keratoplasties are the most common keratoplasties, still being performed in almost half of the cases. So we must learn these surgeries, but should realize that full thickness PK does have a role to play. So we have to learn that first before we embark on these lamellar surgeries. This is the book on corneal transplantation that we have written, and thank you for your attention.